Good afternoon, everybody. Well, the intention of this talk is to show the characteristics of the deposits, the Carling-type deposits, and distal disseminated deposits that are mainly developed in Nevada, United States, but also exist here. To talk a little bit about local evidences in the district and to show or to discuss some criteria for exploration that, to my understanding, are successful or could be successful. And finally, to put on the table some conclusions. This is the geological context of the district. Guacamayo and the surroundings is located in the north part of the pre-mountain range of the San Juan and La Rioja. At the left, you can see in the smaller picture, you can see the location of the deposit. And in the geologic map at the right, it's possible to see the lithological sequence that hosts the mineralization. In light blue, we see all the sequence of the carbonaceous rock. In green, we see the sequence. This is from the Orovícic, it's the San Juan Formation, and the clastic sequences of the Paleozoic and Superior Paleozoic. And in orange, the intrusive bodies that are spatially related to mineralization. We see the different projects we have in the sector, and projects that have been explored and that have these characteristics, like QED, that is a mine in operation at this moment with QED loads west for the next year. The work is starting, and then a series of projects that are both in carbonaceous rocks as in clastic rocks of the Paleozoic Superior. San José, Quebrada Pervida, Cerro Saltito, Las Vacas, Salamanca. The last one in dolomitic bodies of Cambrian zone. Disseminate deposits like Carling and distal disseminated deposits have been very studied in the United States. So the similarities and differences are well known. Regarding the similarities, they are disseminated replacement bodies that are normally adjacent to high-grade faults, and their grade tends to increase with depth. And in the case of Guacamayo, they go towards an underground phase. The wall rock are mainly calcareous, sedimentary rocks, paleokarst, collapsation rock, and the pyrite, the arsenical auriferous rock, is presented in the late phase, mineralizing or taking advantage of the structures. The run of mine and the overburden are very fine submicrons. They are grouped in clusters in structural zones, reactivated structural zone, and their genesis is similar. They normally have one late phase of gold, and they are located in open spaces, and they show the evidence of multiple hydrothermal events. There's a controversy with this kind of deposits because there is an absence of veins and wall that could allow us to make a timing and to be able to give relative age. We have in the district in Guacamayo, we have the correct recipe. We have the mineralizing fluids and the sponge, the lithological sponge that receives those deposits. that is the collapsation breccia that I mentioned before, the San Juan rock, and the karst that gives the porosity and permeability that are necessary. In the higher image, we see the sequence of San Juan formation with different members. At the right, we see the breccia in the exploration tunnels that is very characteristic. And in the same exploration tunnel, we see an image that is very common of late periods. In the higher part of that picture, you can see a sequence of lime with the calcite injections. Calcite is normally injected and comes from the dissolution by hydrothermal fluids of the calcareous sequence, and that carbonate is injected as calcite in higher limes. We used that as a guide when we were drilling, intercepting this part. We knew we were close to the mineralized part, and very importantly characterized by these collapse breccias. The calcite is injected higher, in the higher part. We have correct lithology. This is karst breccia, altered at the right breccia. Quebrada del Diablo has a great opportunity. He's already in mining, in the mining stage. It's a white marble with a typical karstic breccia. Talking about the dissolution of carbonate, it produces collapsed breccia formations. This collapsed breccia is made of clasts of different sizes and different voids that are then filled with sedimentation because of the circulation of fluids. At the right, we see an example of Getchell in Nevada, where the blocks have up to 60 grams per ton, and the voids have sediments that are very fine, and it's collapsed breccia. Examples of this is what we have in Guacamayo. At the left, you can see two pictures. One is in the tunnel, in the exploration tunnel, we have a breccia, a mineralized breccia, and we see that this breccia has voids that are filled with red color sediments. And the part you see here, the part of the breccia that is crossed by the exploration tunnel has 9 grams per ton. Talking about the tectonic, the spacing is very important. There is also an implicance, especially in Nevada. It has been studied. There is a strong relationship with the change of tectonic regime from compression to tension. And the mineralization tends to lodge in second-order faults. Just to comment very simply the interpretation of the tectonic and mineralization characteristics in Guacamayo district. First, there is a compression with overfaulting and convergence to the left, and the formation of backthrust and intrusion of these bodies, quartzodioritic bodies of tertiary age, with a deformation in the margin of these bodies, and then because of decrease of compression or relative velocity between the plaques. Probably because of that reason, there was an inversion of this compressive movement, producing a tension or tension stress, and that is the opportunity in which it enters to favorable zones, producing going towards a more favorable zone. Here we can observe the thrust to the west, generation of faults with transfer faults like the ones we can observe in the Tambaria fault entering to Guacamayo sector. And in those transfer sector, there is an area that is used by the intrusive bodies to enter. This intrusive body produces deformations through the edges with a very, very tight folding. We are in a trans-pressure, trans-stress in left-hand side thrust. And then a local local inversion of the movements produces openings and ascent through favorable structures, like in Quebrada del Diablo, where the mineralizing fluids go up and we have a feeder. And there is where the mineralization is produced. And regarding the geometry and control of the mineralization is located in the structure intersection. It's high-grade faults, carbonatic formations, and low-angle features allow the access of the mineralizing fluid that comes from those feeders to the reactive wall rock. Those low-grade features could be anticlinal domes, reverse fault, karstic horizons, and in the left side picture, we see a detachment that is produced in Quebrada del Diablo. It is exactly in the zone where the mineralization is located. And at the right, we see a tunnel at 1880, and the level is 1880. We see the darker side markations. The detachment at local level in Gualcamayo is mapped here. You can see it with blue color. It has a divergence towards the west, and it's because of a back arc. It corresponds with the divergence of the main thrust that goes to the east. We have the intrusive body in pink and light blue, and those come from the Cambric and Ordovicic, and the resources are limited because by this subhorizontal surface, this subhorizontal limit. And regarding the mineralization and the folding, it is notable how mineralization follows the axis of the folds. At the right, we see in green and red the sector of Magdalena, where the mineralization is the model of the resource and follows the folding, the tight folding stuck to the border. And this is where the main, the part that has 1 gram per ton, where the resource also follows the folding shape. And we have the structural scheme in dilation with geology. Schematically, we can see in that diagram that we have an intrusive body that is producing a contact aureole in the Guacamayo zone, 100 meters wide, before arriving to the fresh zone. In transition zone, characterized because of marble and breccia, that is the zone that acts as a detachment that opens and allows the access of mineralization, producing sigmoid pictures, sigmoid shapes, both in plant and in vertical, that lodge the mineralization. A model of the resource, in the lower part, we can see the sigmoidal shape of that resource because of that behavior of opening between the intrusive body and the wall rock. In the geochemical aspects, most of the Carling deposits has a silver-gold ratio below 0.5, more than 500 ppm of arsenic, more than 1 ppm of mercury, and an association of gold, arsenic, and mercury. And in the distal disseminated deposits, the silver-gold ratio is higher. We have the Perdida project, approximately has 2, and San Jose approximately has 7, but they share the presence of arsenic peat that is produced because of replacement of the wall rock. Gold has a native expression and gold linked to marcasites. There is no evidence of mineralization in open spaces, but there is gold in open spaces. And in the weathering and oxidization produces iron oxides, hematites, or arsenic oxides, and the depth of this weathering is variable, can be more than 500 meters in the case of QED Northwest, where we are below the 500 meters below the surface. The oxidation releases important amounts of gold that can produce economic oxide run-of-mine. Here we see the oxidation along the fractures at 500 meters deep. This is the Potsvets mine in Nevada. And at the right we see the oxide profile also in Twin Ridges mine in Nevada. In Guacamayo, look at the higher part of the image. Iron oxides containing native gold, released gold, and the size is given by that scale. In the lower part, we see the oxidation is very common. With 1 gram per ton, marble is absolutely oxidized, and the oxidation is found in fractures. In fractures in Q, the Lode West, those zones have more than 7 grams per ton. Now, exploring the Carling deposits and distal disseminated we have to look for the lithology, the carbonatic rocks with low deeps, and you can dye the carbonates with potassium fluoride, and this dolomite does not dye. Calcite becomes pink, so they are very useful. The presence of sedimentary breccia and karst are all very useful elements. Regarding the reactivated structures, the intersection of faults and second-order faults, the reverse faults are very important. The contrast of permeability and the features of low angle that I mentioned with geochemistry, the association of gold, mercury, and antimonium, and low rates of silver gold for Carlix, and the high for distal disseminated deposits is mainly because of the percolation along the fracture that is very useful for us.
Descalcificación, como ya mostré,
and calcification phenomena, and the presence of gold and trafalgar and marcasite. This is in the United States. We can see the mineralization on reverse overthrust with faults of accommodation in the intrusive edges, and contact zones are all well objectives. We focus in gold and arsenic in blind, in presence of anomalies of percolation, and the equivalents are also geology, geochemistry. And this scheme shows an east-west profile in Guacamayo that show the structures of overthrust, the backthrust over and with the convergence towards the west, and the development of sigmoid structures and feeders in QED region. So we have a definition of objectives having in account all these criteria. We go to the corridor, the northwest corridor. Being the northwest corridor, we do brownfield and greenfield exploration, considering the edges of the intrusive. And in the lower part, we see in the rock chip and the anomalies of more than 1 gram that follow that northwest trend, and how the structural scheme define that sort of rhombochasm. And the right part of the picture are lodging all our exploration projects close to Guacamayo. Geophysics can be important for mapping. Magnetism for the mapping of intrusive rocks is also very important. Gravimetry for lithological mapping, contact, orals, and for the decalcification projects, as I mentioned, the CAMT that are very useful for faults. The lower pictures are from Guacamayo. Notice the high magnetic, and in the Guacamayo deposit is there in the lower part, and we can see the development of the resource in this zone. And in Salamanca is 10 kilometers to the north in a very similar lithological context with the development of sigmoids. We can also pay attention to magnetometry that shows intrusive bodies in the edge and the zone of transition between high and low, where Salamanca deposit is located. But we have Quebrada Perdida, San Jose, Las Vacas, all of them located in the district. So, in San Juan and La Rioja, there are geological ingredients necessary to lodge carling and distal disseminated deposits. The future exploratory efforts will give positive results in this sense. Thank you very much.